Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Aniekolo. Now, according to a new report, governments across Africa are missing out on hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue due to having poor or inadequate mapping services. This apparent lack of accurate geospatial data is also holding countries back in fighting challenges such as population growth, climate change, and dealing with pandemics, according to the See Your Nation's Potential report from the UK's mapping agency Ordnance Survey, or OS. For over 200 years, OS has mapped every inch of Great Britain, first on paper and now digitally in 3D using geospatial data. It's a national geographic database, the largest and most accurate of its kind in the world, contains over 500 million unique geographic features and updates the data with more than 20,000 changes every single day. As a result, the UK is ranked as being second in the world after the US for its geospatial maturity. Well, for more on this, I'm joined now from the town of Southampton in southern England by Munir Ismet, who is the Managing Director of Britain's Geospatial Solutions Ordnance Survey. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. First of all, tell us about this report that suggests that African countries are missing out on hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue because they're not mapping their countries.
Just before I start, may I express how sorry I am to hear about the events of Kagara, and my condolences to the families, and also the speedy return of those who have been abducted. I hope everything goes well. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you. And yes, you're right. Geospatial has become a really important part of an ecosystem. And what we're realizing is that the importance of data connected but underpinned with the geographical information is really what is connecting lots of information together, which is enabling governments to make better decisions, being able to tackle issues from an economical growth point of view, all the way down to fighting pandemics as a sort of key part of the solution. So what we have done, Ordnance Survey, over the last 200 years, and we are probably I think we are the oldest national mapping agency in the world, is we've continuously reinvented ourselves in terms of how to provide best information for the governments, but also the citizens to really maximize the information that can be provided. And when we take nations in Africa, for instance, and every nation, by the way, is in a different level of maturity in terms of what they can achieve with the geospatial information that they have. And I put the UK into this as well. The leader that we are in terms of the maturity, we are constantly bringing new information to the government and to the citizens. For instance, latest activities have been around measuring the width of the pavements, so that when people are walking, they can walk on either side of the pavement without getting close to each other for the COVID purposes. So all these information can be provided. Now, if we take African nations, what we find is that there is a different level of maturity in terms of how the geospatial information is used in the countries. Now, what that means is that you are potentially not being able to bring in foreign investors to really drive more investment into the nation. You are probably slightly behind the curve around the infrastructures that are required to support the citizens from the point of view of better crop management to better water systems, and the infrastructure such as roads, highways, etc., being really mapped on to provide that information for the citizens, but also for your companies to operate through the nation. And of course, for government to be able to make the right decisions from the point of view of investments to setting up centers, etc., to really drive the economy and provide better service for the citizens. So what we've done is using our experience of what we've been doing over the years in the UK, came up with the concept of a maturity report. And this is an exercise that enables countries to look at where they are in their activities today, where they want to get to, and what is the art of the possible and the journey to take them from A to B to really maximize the returns and the investment and the value back to the citizens, the government,
I'm
and
gonna
of course.
I'm going to come to that issue in a moment because that's obviously quite an important thing and the way that you measure that. But what I'm interested in, because you've talked a lot, you've said a lot of things that we have to kind of take on board. But some of the key things for developing countries are some of the things that I noticed in this report, which is that the lack of accurate geospatial data is also holding African countries back in fighting challenges such as population growth, climate change, and dealing with epidemics and pandemics. I mean, these are things that are obviously of major importance and major concern to these countries. How might this data help in dealing with these challenges?
So what the data, the purpose of the data is to map very accurately the nation's map in terms of the geography. And the accuracy here is the key thing in that being able to, so for instance, one of the things that we're doing in the UK around the epidemic control with the COVID is being able to decide where should the vaccination centers be located so that the citizens can get from A to B within a certain set parameter time so that they can be access to the services efficiently. The second is providing information around where are the doctors, surgeries, pharmacies, supermarkets are so that people can move accordingly. The other things we're doing is around, for instance, enabling better information will pinpoint where a service needs to be delivered. So the information that we're looking at here will enable a emergency service to arrive at the point of event rather than sort of half a mile beyond it. So we're talking about accuracy of 5-6 centimeters to be able to bring the information to the emergency services or the service providers. So this, from the point of view of delivering a service and ensuring that the right service arrives at the right time, is very important to the citizens. Now, if you're looking at it from an economic point of view, being able to analyze with the information that we capture the water flows, the agricultural support that might be required in a country to enable them to maximize crop information, mapping the soil types, increasing yield through planting of sort of the right type of crops is very much important. And this includes irrigation, etc. And the third point I'll make is that the accuracy of land ownership means that if you have foreign investors who are trying to come into the country to be able to invest, whether that is mining, etc., it gives confidence that the information is accurate and relevant, but also from the citizen point of view, being able to accurately pinpoint the boundaries of land, etc., gives confidence and therefore drives, we believe, the economy going forward.
Okay, so why do you reckon, given all these benefits, that African governments have failed to map their countries?
I certainly wouldn't say African governments have failed. I mean, I think, as we said, we are in different levels of maturities. I think there is sometimes sort of the value versus cost can become an issue. And the studies that we've done is that a sound geospatial infrastructure can provide up to 2% growth in GDP. And I think one of the things that we see in some of our friends in Africa is that these projects can be sort of a long-term investment projects, and so therefore financing can be a little bit difficult. Well, one of the things that we are bringing to the table is the partnerships that can be put together with organizations, including ourselves, to really help the governments see the value that can be generated, but also helping the system, the new implementations, generate extra income for the government, whether that's through tax collection or more efficiency, disaster recovery planning, etc., that can hopefully support the investment for the long term, which is where the benefit will come from. So I mean, we are in discussions with a number of nations in Africa, and there is a big demand for modernization. And I think the value of geospatial is being recognized more and more. It takes time, and I think we are in a phase where we're seeing a lot of interest for positive development in the continent.
Nevertheless, the new report on sort of geospatial sort of solutions and ordnance that came out claims that Africa is the worst performing continent when it comes to geospatial readiness, with countries like Namibia, Uganda and Sudan ranking bottom of the list, while Nigeria, where we are, ranks 52 on the index. Can you explain that index a bit more for us?
I mean, index is based on, this is obviously a global index, and it's based on the accuracy of data that is captured, what we call the currency, which is if you're collecting the data, say, from a satellite, there is a certain level of accuracy. If you're collecting it via aerial flights, and there is different level of accuracy. And then, of course, you have people on the ground who can actually make the final adjustments, etc. And we are finding that in Western Europe and the US, there's a higher level of degree of accuracy on the information that has been captured. In some of the African nations, we're finding that accuracy is not there yet. And as I said, the discussions are that the demand is there. It is a matter of really putting these onto the table and into the agenda so that it's not seen. I think at times the investment has been seen more of an spend than an spend for a greater return. So therefore, I think short-term investment has been a little delayed in some nations in Africa. But I mean, you named Namibia, for instance. So one of the things, for instance, we've done with Namibia recently was working with the Ministry of Land Reform to accelerate sustainable economic growth across the nation by strengthening the way it manages land administration. So there are very good projects that are on the way. But I think if you're looking at the overall point of view, probably Africa today is slightly behind the curve, and therefore we believe that there is a fantastic opportunity to really move Africa from where you are today to a significant leap ahead by using the latest technologies to really achieve much faster returns than maybe it would have been for those countries who have taken their time over a number of years. So I see it as an opportunity and as a challenge, of course, because there's always issues around legislations, policy, etc. And all that has to come together because this is a significant decision-making from a government point of view, that it underpins all of the infrastructure, but it does mean that there are lots of ministries that will have to come together to support the concept. And maybe that's sometimes why there are delays in the execution.
Okay, well, stay with us, Munir. We certainly want to talk with you some more. This is all rather interesting and new. You're watching the Arise interview. Plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat about inadequate mapping services across Africa, as a result of which governments are missing out on hundreds of billions of dollars in revenue. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Arise interview. I'm Charles Onyegulu. Now, my guest today, Munir Ismet, is the Managing Director of Britain's Geospatial Solutions Ordnance Survey, or OS, the agency that's been responsible for mapping every inch of the UK for the last 200 years. OS is already working with governments in Namibia, Ethiopia, Rwanda and Tanzania to help improve their geospatial infrastructure and enabling them to realize economic, societal and environmental benefits, as well as boosting GDP. A new report claims improved geospatial data can help nations secure long-term food and water security, increase productivity and resource availability, predict and mitigate the effects of climate change, rebuild after disasters, as well as generate billions in returns from the establishment of secure land rights, and unlock the benefits of technologies like 5G, autonomous vehicles, and smart cities. And Munir Ismet, Managing Director of Britain's Geospatial Solutions Ordnance Survey, is still with me from Southampton in southern England. Thank you very much indeed for staying with us. And just tell us a bit about how you actually go about mapping countries. I understand you use very advanced technology to do that.
Well, I think the starting point we see is really sitting with the nations and work out what is it that currently is in place today, look at what is the art of the possible, and then find the appropriate technologies to deliver it. So first of all, we have a program called a Geo-Maturity Program, where we assess the readiness of a nation in terms of what they are trying to achieve. And then the technologies that are required actually vary from one country to the other sometimes. So it can be a combination of satellite images that can be collected. It can be flying across the nation and therefore collect information that way. Or now we're using artificial intelligence to really see what are the changes that have been happening over time, and then keep that map accurately and up to date. And one of the things that we see as a task from our point of view is that, Ordnance Survey, as you mentioned, have been around for a long time. And we've survived because we've been reinventing ourselves and applying the new technologies and innovation to keep us really ahead of the game and be still relevant. And one of the things that we are keen to do is use that vast experience that we have and skill up in these countries so that the African nations can actually be self-sufficient in terms of skills, ability to collect data, analyze, and process, so that you don't have to, you can use your ecosystem internally to really power up your organizations, whilst we can provide external support from organizations like ours that have gone through the learning curve. So it is very much, like you mentioned, a combination of technologies, lots of flying, and technology is getting better all the time, and being able to really combine the best for the right nations. So for instance, there are technologies that potentially can only will support cloudy nations, or where there is a rainforest, etc. And it doesn't necessarily mean that every nation requires that type of sophisticated technology. So our task is to work with the nations to really identify what is the landscape, what is the systems that exist today, how do you take that and maximize this so you don't throw anything away? Because there is a lot of investment have been made over the years, and it is pointless to sort of say, throw all that and start again, because there is lots of good stuff that you can build upon, but enhance it with the latest technologies and bring better quality collection of data, so that the points you mentioned in your introduction in terms of enabling information for whether it is 5G, whether it is for sort of better agricultural control, etc. Those become a byproduct of the infrastructure. The way I look at geospatial is that it's almost like the canvas that leads underneath everything that you have. And then on top of that, you can build in services, whether that is now, town planning, utilities, insurance, etc. But services that can be built upon to support economy and support the ecosystem and provide better services. But the combination of technology very much varies from nation to nation. So therefore, an assessment in terms of the nation, whether that is the weather condition, the rain it receives, to lighting, etc., but also information that you have already, and putting that together to sort of say, this is the movement, is probably the best way.
Well, I mean, we get the point that you're making, and thank you for that very comprehensive explanation. I think the bottom line is that for a lot of people who are not really that technologically savvy, and you tend to find that a lot of people in government aren't, the bottom line often is, okay, we want you to do A, B, C, and we have this amount of money. Just hypothetically speaking, if I said to you that I've got $10 million, what might I be able to get from that, and what benefits can I derive from it? And as briefly as you can.
Of course. I mean, everything these days is all about return on investment. There is no point in investing unless we can identify what is the benefit that we can realize in the short, medium, and long term. So for me, it's a hard one to answer in terms of what a 10 million may achieve. But we have done what we call proof of concepts or pilots, where we identify a part of the nation, we collect the data, we demonstrate the value that that can bring to that part of the nation, and then use that potentially to generate more income to support additional sort of widening that circle from a pilot to a region, and then region
right.
to
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. I'm going to interrupt you again, and I apologize, but it's perhaps not a fair question. But let me give you an example. A country like Nigeria is trying very hard to develop its agriculture. It's trying to identify places where you can grow different types of crops. It's got vast, very arable land. What might you be able to provide for it? How might you help in that endeavor?
So I think what we would potentially like to do would be to sit with your national mapping agency and understand what you have already, and then build upon that by identifying part of Nigeria where we can test the concepts, capture the area, put some artificial intelligence on top of that to understand what is the makeup of the nation, so that when it is rolled out, the intelligence and the technology that has been created can do this more automatically, so therefore reduce the cost, and then and implement the solution, and then validate it with yourselves to ensure that the objectives that we can set in advance can be demonstrated, and so therefore we can then agree what is the best way of investing for going forward. But we have seen nations where investment of time and resource, and it does take, it's not just money, it's resource and commitment, is really demonstrating real returns by identifying those key activities that can be implemented. So I would be very keen to engage with Nigerian ministries to get into more detail, because I do feel that there is great value that can be released from your nation.
Well, we've got less than a minute before we have to go, and there was a thing you mentioned earlier. You launched a tool to help countries identify and assess their geospatial maturity. First of all, what does geospatial maturity mean, and how does this tool measure it? And you've got about 40 seconds, so keep it brief.
Okay. Well, the tool is built upon a vast experience that we have over the years in terms of working with a number of nations, in terms of identifying where they are and where they want to get to. And the tool enables them to do a roadmap and then a set of steps that can be achieved to achieve those objectives that can be set. The tool is online. You can access it through our report. But we also have individuals that will come and sit with the nation and the right people to get to the nitty-gritty of it. And I'd be very keen to engage with our Nigerian colleagues to help you unlock your potential.
All right, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we're out of time. Munir Ismet is Managing Director of Britain's Geospatial Solutions Ordnance Survey, and he was talking to me there from Southampton in southern England. That's it for this edition of the Arise interview, albeit a fraught one. Do join us again tomorrow from me and the entire team here in Abuja and the UK. Bye-bye, and thank you for watching.